Hi Tom, welcome.
Thank you.
Right, let's get started because we've got a lot to talk about. I want to get started on Thomas Markle. Now he's a man that we've both met, we've both spoken to, probably have certain thoughts and feelings about. What's your feelings towards Tom? He's almost sorry, it's his 80th birthday this week, almost forgot to say. He's turning 80. How do you feel about Tom? He's almost the forgotten man in the kind of royal row. We forget that there are two warring families here and that Thomas Markle is at the heart of one side.
Well, I feel intensely sorry for him. I mean, he is a very decent man, hard-working. He was a wonderful father. Meghan owes him such a lot, and she's treated him appallingly. She's treated him in a way which is just totally unwarranted. And there he is sitting in a rather shabby cabin in New Mexico, and he doesn't deserve what she's ladled out.
When I met Tom, as I say, I kind of felt a little bit sorry for him. It's his 80th birthday. Meghan's several hundred miles away. It would be quite an easy thing for her and Harry to either drive down or give him a call or send him a card. Do you think that could ever happen?
No, I mean, Meghan is completely unforgiving, and Harry has behaved appallingly towards his father-in-law. And unfortunately, I think it's not just these phony photographs, but it's all to do with snobbery and everything else. You know, he is a retired man, he hasn't got much money, and Meghan is just famous for dumping people who don't suit her profile anymore. And I just feel as well that her mother poisoned the atmosphere, most unfairly as well, because Thomas was very good to her. And in the end, he's a great man, a good man, who is going to spend the rest of his life wondering why he has been treated so badly.
Phew. Right out of the gate, Tom Bauer does not hold back. He flat out calls Meghan an agent of poison. And honestly, folks, how many times do we have to see it before it becomes undeniable? And let's talk about remorselessness, because that word is key. Thomas Markle has begged for reconciliation. He's admitted his mistakes, tried to make amends, and yet Meghan refuses to even speak to him. What kind of daughter does that? But here's where it gets even darker. Tom Bauer suggests that once Meghan decides someone is expendable, she doesn't just ignore them. She actively works to neutralize them. That's a strong accusation, folks. But let's be real. How many people have suffered reputational damage after getting on the wrong side of Meghan Markle?
Well, you paint a picture of this in your book Revenge, where you list many occasions where Meghan has, I think we call it ghosting someone, where Meghan, I think there was one incident you report in your wonderful book where when she was a child, she would give a silent treatment to one of her friends. She would almost turn her back on her until her friend decided that she would speak to her again. I mean, this is her behaviour. This is what she does, but this is her father.
It is her father, but she did the same to Harry and his family too. I mean, Meghan is an agent of poison. She actually is able to destroy relationships. And when she cultivates relationships, it's always for her own good, her own purpose. So she's not actually someone who's any generosity of spirit. And it is really one of the great sadnesses of this whole saga that in the end Meghan has destroyed the relationship between Harry and his family, just as she's destroyed the relationship with not only her father but also her half-sister.
I think with Meghan, you know, I've been devil's advocate, but I feel a little bit of, I can understand possibly that she feels a bit betrayed by what happened with Thomas when he was, you know, making those paparazzi pictures just before her wedding. There was obviously a lot of stress going on with Meghan. She's spoken about, you know, the stress that she was going through before the wedding, and I don't think, you know, those photographs really, the stage photographs really helped. I mean, is Thomas maybe to blame for the fact that Meghan doesn't talk to him? Does he hold a little bit of the blame, maybe?
No, I don't think at all. I think what happened was in the run-up to the wedding, he was just abandoned, whereas Doria, her mother, got a lot of help from the palace on what to do, how to cope and everything. He was absolutely besieged by journalists once they found out where he was living, and no one came to help him. And even when he had his heart attack and wasn't able to get to the wedding, no one was there to help him. So I think that the palace behaved appallingly towards him, abandoned him, very much, I think, because Harry and Meghan themselves just weren't there to help him either. They just thought he was someone who could be ignored, and that was a great tragedy for him, and I think also for the royal family.
You talk about being ignored. I mean, Thomas, over the years, has spoken out, and I think that Meghan has kind of got frustrated at times. But that's all he has. You know, if his daughter's not talking to him, then that's all he has, is to speak to the media and give his side of the story and try to get a message towards Meghan.
Well, yes, we've got to remember another thing about it. Meghan's mother deserted her when she was 2 years old. No one ever saw Meghan's mother at school in all her years, both at primary and at secondary school. So Thomas, working phenomenally hard as a lighting director, always made sure that he was at home then for Meghan, took her out at weekends, paid for her schooling, paid for all the things, including her union ticket, to become an actress. So suddenly, to be treated in that way, so ungratefully, so spitefully, just has completely shattered a man who in the end doted and worshipped his daughter. And he can't understand it. And he just thought that the letters and the things that Meghan publicised about what a terrible man he was completely unwarranted. And of course, that's the indication of Meghan. I mean, it's not just obviously her father. She did the same to the Queen. She did the same to Princess Kate and to William. She is a person who has absolutely remorseless in her hatred if she doesn't decide that someone should be neutralised and destroyed. And that is her strength and, of course, her weakness.
Now, let's talk about the tragic situation with Thomas Markle. Because honestly, this might be one of the coldest, most ruthless cutoffs we've ever seen in the public eye. Here's a man who raised Meghan as a single father, paid for her private school education, and even supported her through acting school. He wasn't some absent, deadbeat dad, he was there. And yet, the moment she got the prince and didn't need him anymore, poof, he was erased. And folks, let's be real. This estrangement didn't happen because Thomas Markle was some abusive, neglectful father. The breaking point was a set of staged paparazzi photos before her wedding. That's it. He made one bad decision, apologized for it, and Meghan decided he was no longer useful. Insert clip of Thomas Markle's interviews, apologizing for the paparazzi photos. And keep in mind, this was around the same time Harry was out there lecturing everyone about compassion. Well, where was the compassion for his own father-in-law? Now, I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. Family should matter. Loyalty should matter. And the way Meghan has treated the man who gave her everything?
You paint that quite well in Revenge about the amount of effort that her father went, as a single parent, the amount of money, giving a roof over her head, the support all the way through university. Thomas maybe feels now's the time. Now he's ill, and he is seriously ill. We've both spoken to him, been out there and met the guy. He's not a very well man. Now is the time, as 80 years old, that a parent would expect their successful daughter, but not only the successful daughter, but also his son-in-law. I mean, does Harry need to maybe reach out to Tom at some stage? Because he's never met him.
Never met him, but I think it's too late for all that. I mean, the Sussexes have moved on. They don't care two hoots whether he's frankly alive or dead anymore, and probably they prefer him to disappear. I mean, that's the problem with the Sussexes. They are only interested in themselves. All the talk about helping society and generosity towards the underdog is all just really puff for themselves. And you've got to judge the Sussexes by the way they've treated Thomas Markle, which is appallingly. They have no compassion for a man who deserves it. And unfortunately, it's going to get worse as he gets older and sicker. And even that was the most astonishing thing. When he had his stroke, Meghan left her home in Montecito, but didn't go down to Mexico to see her father, but went to the site of a school shooting instead. It was just all, of course, for the cameras.
One thing that did jump out in the book Revenge, and I think it was with an interview with Tom, and obviously Doria is a black woman, Tom is a white man, and there was a discussion. Is this right? Before Meghan was born, Thomas said there was a discussion where people said, what colour would Meghan be? And that jumped out because that's a phrase or a discussion that has really come to hit the royal family in later years, because Meghan mentioned it in an Oprah Winfrey interview. How damaging do you think that allegation is against the royal family of racism?
Oh, I think Meghan's allegation of racism, because it was basically completely untrue, caused huge damage for Britain's reputation, the royal family's reputation across the world, incalculable, and it still is there. I think that the way in which the Caribbean islands, Commonwealth countries, reacted, I think the way that African Commonwealth countries reacted, was unbelievably negative. And of course, it was completely and utterly untrue what Meghan said. And what was remarkable was that Harry contradicted her in the Netflix interview, and then afterwards denied it even said it. I mean, they literally forgot that it was recorded. They tried to pretend they hadn't accused the royal family of racism. It just shows how short-sighted they are and how limited they are. But no, I mean, the damage was huge. It was intended to be huge. I mean, she had rehearsed that line, as she had rehearsed the whole of the Oprah Winfrey interview. And unfortunately, it has done great damage, and I don't think it can be really cured.
And there are two things here. It's really difficult for two, middle-aged, middle-class white men or whatever to talk about racism because, we maybe haven't suffered it ourselves. But it's something that you cannot defend yourself against. And it's something that the royal family will find it impossible. As you talk about in the Caribbean, I went to the Caribbean tour, and the William and Catherine in the Caribbean, and that was blighted by so many problems. But it's something the royal family will have to deal with at some stage. Do you think? Do you think they've reacted well enough to it? Do you think there's anything else that they can do or are doing to persuade people that we're not institutionally racist in the UK? The royal family is an inclusive organisation, that King Charles does an awful lot for communities in the UK but also abroad. Do you think the royal family are doing enough to defend themselves against this?
No, I don't, in short. I think they made a terrible mistake after the Oprah Winfrey interview of only saying recollections may vary. I thought that they should have been far, far more aggressive in rebuttal. And I think they could have then limited the damage. But they chose to, in their way, never complain, never explain. And that was a mistake because the accusations were just so virulent. And of course, altogether, I think she said about 17 lies in that interview.
Folks, we all saw it. Prince Harry used to be one of the most beloved royals. He was the fun one, the military man, the guy who connected with the people. Then Meghan enters the picture and suddenly he's burning bridges faster than California wildfires. She didn't just push him away from his brother, Prince William. She drove a wedge between him and his father, King Charles. And now Harry's sitting in Montecito looking miserable, while Meghan's out there trying to rebrand herself as a Hollywood player. Let's not forget the infamous Oprah interview, where she and Harry casually dropped racism allegations against the royal family, without naming names, of course. That was a nuclear-level PR attack. And what happened next? Oh yeah, Netflix deals, Spotify deals, book deals. Every controversy conveniently led to another paycheck.
And Meghan got away with it. And I think the royal family played that badly, and the consequences are there to this day.
The situation with the royal family is, as I say, that they do a lot. I mean, the king does deserve some kind of credit. The royal family do deserve some kind of credit. They have kind of changed slightly since Harry and Meghan have left. Do you think that Harry and Meghan changed the royal family dramatically? Remember, Meghan was only here for 3 years. Do you think they've had a transformative impact on the royal family, or are they just carrying on as normal and, stoically just getting on with the job?
No, I think Meghan and Harry have had a hugely negative impact on the royal family. I think the damage is everlasting and continues. And I think that the tragedy is that they tried terribly hard to help Meghan. After all, Charles escorted her into the wedding in St George's Chapel. The Queen assigned over half a dozen people to look after Meghan, try and help her get into the ways of the royal family. But they could never win. We know now in hindsight that Meghan never really intended to stay. Her guest list to her wedding showed her real ambition was to be a star in California. And Harry's friends were excluded from the guest list in the evening, from the dinner. So we know that the agenda was something which the royal family could never really get to grips with. And that's why their reaction, once the assault came through the Oprah Winfrey and through Netflix interviews, was lame and self-defeating. They should have been far more aggressive in their response to assert their own credibility.
It's really interesting. I remember, reporting on it at the time and trying to get a sense of the atmosphere. And I think there was shock more than anything. I think there was almost a paralysis, particularly after Oprah. They didn't do anything until 24 hours later because it came out in America overnight. And they said, well, we're going to wait till it appears on, I think it was ITV on the Monday evening, and then we will react. There was like a collective kind of palace, deep intake of breath. It was like, what on earth are we dealing with it, with here. But it's 3 years on now, or 4 years on now. I mean, do you think we've got over the Harry and Meghan show in the UK? Do you think we've moved on?
No, because after that was the publication of Spare, Harry's biography, which peddled even more lies and more trouble, and was, of course, again, a worldwide bestseller, because until then, the world was fascinated that two royals could be so disloyal and treacherous. They'd never had that in their lifetimes before. I think there's a waning interest in them now. People are beginning to see the truth, which I exposed 2 years ago in my book Revenge. I mean, the truth about them is they are narcissistic and intent on self-glorification to profit from their notoriety. But at the time, no one wanted to believe it. That's always the problem with iconoclasts. They tell the truth, but no one actually wants at the time to believe it could be that bad.
And let's talk about their hypocrisy for a second. They cry about privacy, then air their dirty laundry to the highest bidder. They claim to want a normal life, then chase the spotlight at every opportunity. Folks, at some point you've got to call it what it is: a grift. Here's the question: does anyone even care about the Sussexes anymore? Because if you look at recent trends, it looks like Hollywood has moved on. Their Spotify deal collapsed. Their Netflix projects underperformed. And their A-list friends? Well, there are rumors that even David and Victoria Beckham are distancing themselves. Meghan and Harry aren't rebels. They're burning bridges faster than they can build new ones. And eventually that catches up with you. So what do you think? Is Meghan as ruthless as Tom Bower claims? Is Harry waking up to reality? Or is this just the beginning of another media stunt?